Rome 400 AD, marble columns reaching toward the sky. Aqueducts carrying fresh water across horizons. The Colosseum holding 50,000 spectators. The capital of an empire spanning 3 continents. An empire that had lasted 1,000 years. If you had tapped a Roman citizen on the shoulder and told them that in 76 years their entire civilization would collapse into empty ruins, they would have called you insane. Rome is eternal. Rome is invincible. The systems are too big to fail. Now stand in Times Square today. Skyscrapers, stock tickers flashing record highs, military power dominating every ocean. If someone told you that by 2026, the foundations of American power would irrevocably crack, you would probably have the exact same reaction. But history is not random. It is a blueprint, a repeating cycle driven by unchanging human nature. And right now we are watching the same pattern unfold. Rome didn't fall because barbarians suddenly became stronger. Rome fell because of a specific economic mistake, a poison that ate away at its core until it was too weak to stand. America has ingested that exact same poison. We are showing the exact same symptoms. And according to historical timelines, we are approaching our own expiration date. This is the story of how currency debasement destroyed the greatest empire in history, and why the United States is repeating it faster and on a larger scale. To understand the collapse, we must understand the foundation. Rome wasn't always corrupt. During the Roman Republic, society was built on what historians call Stoic virtues: duty, frugality, shared destiny. These were hard men, farmers who became soldiers to defend their land, then returned to farming. Economically, this was reflected in their currency. For centuries, Rome used the silver denarius, a coin made of almost pure silver, sound money. If you held a denarius, you held actual intrinsic value. You didn't have to trust the government. You only had to trust the metal in your hand. This created stability. It encouraged savings. It allowed long-term planning. It funded the roads, the aqueducts, the legions that conquered the known world. Because the money was real, the economy was real. But success is a dangerous drug. As Rome conquered more territory, immense wealth flooded into the capital. The ruling class stopped being warrior farmers and became wealthy aristocrats. The focus shifted from production to consumption. By the time the Republic died and the Roman Empire began under Augustus Caesar, the seeds of decay were already planted. The empire stretched from Britain to Egypt. Maintaining this expanse was incredibly expensive. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers stationed thousands of miles away, infrastructure across continents, and most importantly, keeping the population of Rome happy. This is where bread and circuses originated. To prevent riots, emperors provided free grain and massive gladiatorial games. The ancient version of welfare and entertainment distraction. All of this cost enormous amounts of money. The gold and silver looted from conquered nations began to dry up. The expenses of the empire started to outweigh its income. Rome had a budget deficit. An emperor facing a deficit has 2 choices. Choice 1 is the hard choice: cut spending, which makes citizens angry, or raise taxes, which makes the rich and powerful angry. No emperor wanted that. They wanted to be loved. They wanted glory. So they chose the easy path. They chose the fatal mistake. They decided to mess with the money. It started in 64 AD. Emperor Nero faced a financial crisis. He needed money to pay debts and fund his lavish lifestyle. He came up with a devious idea. Nero gathered up the silver denarius coins, melted them down, and mixed in a small amount of cheap base metals like copper. Then he remunted the coins. Suddenly, Nero had more coins to spend. The new denarius looked the same on the surface. It had the emperor's face. It was officially declared to be worth the same amount. But in reality, it had less silver, less intrinsic value. This was the ancient version of money printing. Nero had just debased the currency. At first, nobody noticed. The party continued. But subsequent emperors saw how easy this was. If they needed to fund a war, they just added more copper to the silver mix. If they needed to build a new palace, they just debased the currency a little more. Over the next 200 years, this process accelerated. By the time of Emperor Marcus Aurelius around 170 AD, the denarius was only about 75% silver. 50 years later, it was down to 50% silver. By 270 AD, under Emperor Aurelian, the denarius had become a joke. It was barely 5% silver, basically a bronze coin with a thin silver wash that rubbed off after a few uses. The Roman government had effectively stolen the wealth of its people slowly over 2 centuries. But here is the thing about economics. You cannot cheat reality forever. The people of the empire eventually realized what was happening. Merchants, traders, and soldiers realized that the coins they were receiving were junk. They knew the government was lying about the value of the money. The result was catastrophic inflation. Because the money was worth less, merchants demanded more of it for the same goods. The price of wheat, oil, and clothing skyrocketed. We have records showing that in the 2nd century, a specific measure of wheat cost around 8 drachmas. By the 3rd century, that same measure cost 120,000 drachmas. Savings were wiped out. If you had saved good silver coins your whole life, the government's new junk coins made your nest egg worthless. The middle class evaporated. To combat this, emperors tried even more desperate measures. Emperor Diocletian issued the edict on maximum prices in 301 AD. He made it illegal to raise prices under penalty of death. It failed miserably. Merchants simply stopped selling goods or moved to the black market. Shortages spread across the empire. People were starving in the streets because the economic system had completely broken down. The soldiers on the frontiers, realizing they were being paid in worthless metal, began to mutiny. They abandoned their posts. They cared more about survival than defending a capital city that was robbing them. And this is the crucial point. The barbarians didn't break through Rome's walls because they were suddenly stronger. They broke through because Rome was weaker. The financial rot had destroyed the social contract. Why fight for an empire that pays you in fake money? Why produce goods for a system that punishes savers? When the money dies, trust dies. And when trust dies, the empire dies. The Visigoths sacked Rome in 410 AD, not with a bang but with a whimper. They walked into a hollow shell of a once great civilization. Now let us turn that mirror toward ourselves. Just like Rome, America began with a currency backed by hard assets. The US dollar was for a long time a receipt for gold, a promise that the government could not simply print its way out of trouble. This discipline helped build the greatest industrial engine in human history. Just like Rome, America became the undisputed global superpower after a massive global conflict. World War II. We became the world's policeman. We established military bases in every corner of the globe. We became incredibly wealthy, shifting from a nation of producers to a nation of consumers and debtors. And just like Rome, we reached a point where our ambitions outweighed our wallet. We wanted guns and butter, massive military spending to maintain our global empire, and massive social welfare programs at home. Starting in the 1960s, the pressure began to mount. We were fighting the Vietnam War and launching the Great Society programs simultaneously. Gold was draining out of the US Treasury as foreign nations demanded payment. So in 1971, President Richard Nixon did exactly what Emperor Nero did. He closed the gold window. He declared that the US dollar was no longer convertible into gold. In that instant, the US dollar stopped being a receipt for reality and started being a fiat currency. Its value was now based entirely on faith in the United States government. We switched from the silver denarius to the copper coin. Since 1971, the debasement of the US dollar has been relentless. But unlike Rome, which was limited by how fast they could physically melt down and remint metal coins, we have no physical limitations. We can create trillions of dollars with a few keystrokes at the Federal Reserve. This allows us to speedrun the collapse. What took Rome 200 years, we are achieving in 50. Look at the national debt. It took the United States over 200 years to accumulate its first $1 trillion in debt. Today, we add a new $1 trillion every few months. We are now over $38 trillion in debt. This number is so large, the human brain cannot comprehend it. How are we paying our bills? We are printing the money. The Federal Reserve creates new dollars out of thin air to buy the government's debt. This is exactly the same mechanism as adding base metal to silver coins. Every new dollar that is printed dilutes the purchasing power of every dollar you worked hard to save. We are already seeing the cracks form. You feel it every time you go to the grocery store. You feel it when you look at housing prices that have become completely disconnected from reality. The government will try to tell you inflation is low, just like Roman emperors claimed their copper coins were silver, but your bank account knows the truth. Sir John Glubb, a British historian, analyzed the life cycles of great empires over 3,000 years. He found a startling pattern. The Assyrians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Roman Republic, the Ottoman Empire, the British Empire. They all lasted for an average of about 250 years. They go through the same stages: the age of pioneers, the age of conquests, the age of commerce, the age of affluence, the age of intellect, and finally the age of decadence and decline. The age of decadence is marked by debt, an influx of foreigners, a welfare state, and a weakening of the shared values that built the empire. Does that sound familiar? The United States declared independence in 1776. If you add 250 years to that date, you land squarely on the year 2026. We are mathematically at the end of the historical average lifespan of a superpower. We have checked every single box on the list of empire collapse symptomatology: massive debt, currency debasement, military overextension, internal social division. Just like late-stage Rome, America is facing intense internal division. The gap between the super-rich who benefit from money printing and the working class is wider than at any point since the Gilded Age. We are seeing the rise of bread and circuses, endless entertainment cycles, social media dopamine loops, celebrity gossip. While the foundations of our economic house are being eaten away, we are distracted. We have a population heavily dependent on government assistance, creating a political feedback loop that makes cutting spending political suicide. The Roman Empire's final mistake was believing that the laws of economics didn't apply to them because they were Rome. They thought they could cheat the system by diminishing their currency, and that the rest of the world would just accept it forever. America's final mistake is exactly the same. We believe that because the US dollar is the world reserve currency, we can print infinite amounts of it without consequence. We believe that we can borrow more money than has ever existed in human history and never have to pay it back in real terms. But the rest of the world is waking up. Just like the merchants in ancient Rome began to refuse the debased denarius, we see nations around the world actively taking steps to move away from the US dollar in global trade. China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, India. These are the modern barbarians at the gate. They are not attacking with swords. They are attacking by simply rejecting our debt. The BRICS nations are creating alternative payment systems. Central banks around the world are buying gold at record rates. Oil, the commodity that has been priced exclusively in dollars for 50 years, is now being traded in yuan, rubles, and other currencies. If the world stops accepting dollars for real goods like oil and manufactured products, all those trillions of printed dollars will flood back into the domestic US economy. The result will not just be the inflation we see today, it will be hyperinflation that wipes out the middle class overnight. The year 2026 is not a doomsday prediction where the world ends on a Tuesday. It is a historical marker. It is the point where the mathematical weight of our debt and debasement becomes unsustainable. It is the point where the interest payments on our national debt become larger than our entire defense budget. It is the point of no return. When Rome fell, it wasn't the end of the world. Humanity survived, Italy survived. But the structure of that society, the comfort, the security, and the global dominance vanished into the Dark Ages. Those who were dependent on the system were crushed when the system failed. Those who survived and even thrived during the collapse of Rome were the ones who saw it coming. They were the ones who held real assets: land, gold, silver, productive skills, instead of relying on the debased currency of a dying state. The warning signs are flashing red. History is screaming at us across the centuries. The mistake has already been made. The poison is already in the system. The only question now is how long the patient has left. We cannot stop the cycle of empire. It is bigger than any of us. It is bigger than any politician, but we can learn from it. We can refuse to be like the Roman citizen standing in the Colosseum, believing that the party will last forever. We can open our eyes and see the ruins before they happen. Rome fell after it debased its currency. The denarius went from pure silver to worthless bronze over 2 centuries. The trust died, the empire died. America is following the exact same path. The dollar went from gold-backed to fiat in 1971. We have printed more money in the last 15 years than in the previous 200. The clock is ticking toward 2026. The final act is playing out. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And right now the rhyme is deafening. The question is not whether the pattern will hold. The question is what you are going to do about it.